Ms. Simmons, could you turn on your video? Ms. Simmons, could you turn on your video, please?
I'm waiting for it to start.
36th District Court is back in session with the Honorable Raeigen Evans presiding. While court's in session, there's absolutely no walking around, talking, eating, sleeping, smoking, or listening to any electronic devices. When your name is called, please give your full and undivided attention to the court. Good morning, Your Honor.
All right, good morning, Mr. Conway. This is the People versus Lula Rayford, ticket number V128341. Count one, harboring two dogs, which by loud frequent barking caused the public nuisance to neighbors. And ticket number V128342. Count one, failed to prevent two dogs from from engaging in nuisance, menacing, or dangerous behavior. Good morning. Please say your name. Well, we're here for a continued bench trial. Good morning. Please say your names for the record.
Tamika Horn, appearing on behalf of the city, P70303. We also have our investigating officer. Please state your name for the record.
Investigator Janitra Chandler, Detroit Animal Control, Badge 15.
Field Manager Wilkerson, P81003, on behalf of Ms. Rayford. Ms. Rayford, please state your name for the record.
Lula Rayford.
All right, Ms. Simmons, can you unmute yourself, say your name?
Sharnick Simmons for the People. I'm trying to appear. I have no idea what's going on with the video.
And it's okay. We're gonna put you back in the waiting room because I don't know if you're gonna be recalled as a witness. So, and I'm pretty sure there's a sequestration order. So, we'll put you back in the waiting room, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Right. Okay. So it looks like people are still presenting their case. Ms. Horn?
Yes, that's correct, Your Honor. Just as a pre-continuous trial matter. I think I lost track of our exhibits. Mr. Petway, do you have a record of the exhibits that have been admitted here? I think it's one.
What day was the trial last held on?
Let's see. Take a look.
It was March the 6th.
March 6th. And Ms. Wilkerson, did you get my email? There's only one that we're trying to admit today, and that just is for purposes of showing notice.
I know that there was a video. There were two videos that the court did observe.
I didn't get a chance to admit mine into evidence before we discontinued the trial. So there should only be one admitted so far, I believe.
Okay.
Of yours, Ms. Wilkerson?
No, the one you admitted. I didn't put it on the record before we stopped the trial last time.
Okay, and I think that people had two admitted.
Yeah, so the court saw one video where Ms. Simmons was shoveling the snow in her backyard. And then there was a video of the dog, it looks like it was a Yorkshire Terrier, or that was sniffing on her property.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I believe Ms. Wilkerson's was the one that was a continuation of the one with the Yorkie. Is that correct, Ms. Wilkerson?
Yes, and I will be moving to admit that one as well.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, you ready to call your next witness, Ms. Horn?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. The people call, it's investigating Officer Chandler to the stand.
Investigator Chandler, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can put your hand down and you may proceed, Ms. Horn.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. And so, where are you currently employed, investigator?
Detroit Animal Control.
Okay, and what is your current position with Detroit Animal Control?
Currently, I am a supervisor.
Okay. And Supervisor, how long have you been an animal control officer?
9 years as of March 10th.
And please describe any training that you've received in relation to your position as an animal control officer.
I am certified as an animal control officer. I'm also certified in EBI training, also certified in NACA training and the Michigan Animal Control Association training for animal control.
Okay, and can you explain in detail what is EBI training?
Euthanasia training to be certified to pertain euthanasias.
Okay, and what is NACA training?
NACA is the National Association of Animal Control, which certifies you as an investigator.
Okay, and in your training, how did it teach you to respond to witnesses? I mean, to citizens.
We are trained to investigate all matters and to make a decision as to what to determine the facts in reference to that investigation.
Okay, and in this particular matter, how did you arrive to the defendants, or how did you arrive to the address here?
Okay, there was a call put in our system, which is called Chameleon. Chameleon is a system that we use for our calls. I had got a call. It first went to the officers, and then it ended up coming to me because it was a previous investigator working it before me.
Okay, and I'm just gonna walk you through it. And so when that call came through Chameleon, do you recall the date of that call?
That call came through on 6/3/2022.
Okay, and what are you referring to when you refreshed your memory here? I noticed that you looked down.
Yes, I'm looking at the activity that was generated and made that I worked on that date. And it states in reference to there was a previous activity made on 5/17. Officers referred that call, the follow-up call to me.
Okay, and what did you do with that follow-up call?
Follow-up call, I tried to make contact with the defendant. I was unable to make contact. I tried to also make contact with the complainant. And was unable to make contact with the complainant, but at the time when I arrived, I saw no violations.
Okay, and would you be able to recognize the defendant today?
Yes.
Okay, and can you identify that defendant today?
Yes, that's Miss Lula Rayford.
And what is she wearing, or what are some identifying features on her today?
She's wearing glasses. Her hair might be a little different. I can't see her clothes really, but she is the person who I spoke with at the door.
Okay, and and when you arrived at the door, when do you recall the date that you spoke with her?
When I eventually was able to speak with her was on 6/19/2022 at 5:00 p.m.
Okay, and at that time, what did you communicate to her? And you can did you want to correct that?
Yes, it was actually 6:20. The call was made at 6:19. I didn't actually work the call to 6:20 the next day.
Okay, and what did you communicate to her, if anything?
I made contact with her. I spoke with her. I introduced her as to who I was and why I was there at her home. I stated to her that there was a complaint regarding nuisance barking, and that there was previous complaints, several of them. She stated she wasn't.
And how do you, I'm sorry, how do you know? No, that's okay, you understand. How do you know that there were previous complaints?
There was a previous investigator working this case back in 2020.
And how do you know that?
Through our files. Again, through Chameleon, it tracks every call that we make to this residence.
Okay. And this particular complaint, what was the complaint about that you communicated to Miss Rayford?
Nuisance barking.
And what do you define as nuisance barking?
Nuisance barking is when a citizen allows their dogs to continuously bark for more than 20 to 30 minutes or more interfering, with, citizens.
Okay, and when you say interfering with citizens, in what way would you describe that?
Well, we say that, we mean, so barking continuously where it's interfering with them watching TV, or if they're working from home, they can't work from home because the dog is continuously barking. That type nuisance is a noise ordinance nuisance.
Okay, and who did you speak to who reported, did you speak to anyone?
I spoke with Miss Charmaine Simmons.
And is she here today?
Yes,
And has she previously testified?
yes.
Okay, and what did she tell you that day?
It
Objection,
wasn't
Your
that,
Honor. That still would be hearsay if she told her something that was outside of court.
Okay, let's see. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. And but you did state that you were called to the location for nuisance barking.
correct.
Okay, thank you. And were there any other reasons you issued a nuisance? Did you issue any violations for this complaint?
Yes, after getting multiple calls and multiple videos and emails regarding Mrs. Simmons' complaints, I eventually went ahead and wrote a ticket, because at the time, when I did speak with her in June, I stated she still did not have a dog license, was not complying with that, or could not provide proof of a rabies vaccination. So
Have you been since provided with that information?
That is correct. I do have that, which she purchased on July 23rd of 2022.
Okay, and who purchased those licenses and rabies compliance documents?
That will be Lula Rayford.
And Ms. Wilkerson, have you had an opportunity to see the email I sent you this morning?
I did, with the activity reports on it, yes.
Right, and the people, I just want to share my screen to show the dates that the officer here has testified to as notice of what she's testifying to, and that would be the last page, Ms. Wilkerson.
The one that's dated 6/19 with the
Yes,
dated 6/20.
Yes, let's see, 6/3, which would be the call date. I think that's the last page.
Okay,
And then I think mine are out of order.
For me.
I'm sorry.
It's split between 2 pages for me, but that's fine. Are you using both 6/3 and 6/19?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, Your Honor, the people are asking to publish. Okay, and it says disabled sharing, but I'll try it.
Oh, here, I might have to do something.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. Wilkerson, I wanted to provide them to you since she's referencing them as refreshing to her memory. Okay. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Let's see. Okay, and Your Honor, the people are showing the activity card that Supervisor Chandler is referring to in total as exhibit number 3. And this is dated, it's a call date of 6/3/2022 at 4:14 p.m. That would be, I guess you would say 3A of the exhibit, and 3B of the exhibit is also dated 6/19/2022 at 4:56 p.m.
You're moving to admit these into evidence?
The people are moving to admit as exhibit number 3A and B.
Any objection, Ms. Wilkerson?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right,
Okay, thank you. Okay, and going forward, thank you, and let me stop sharing. And were you on duty on those 2 dates?
Yes.
Okay, and when did you issue your citation?
August 19th.
And you issued those citations, why?
I had received another phone call, received an email and a text from Ms. Simmons regarding the continuous barking complaint. It wasn't so much regarding the feces, but it was more so about the barking complaint. She stated she had done her logging and she was willing to testify because I explained I cannot testify to something I do not see or know.
Correct.
And so at that point, I wrote the citation.
Okay. And at any point, did you have contact with Ms. Rayford thereafter?
No, I have not.
And Your Honor, I think I'm gonna make sure. And have you had to since make any visits to the property?
I haven't personally, because as I stated, I'm now a supervisor.
Okay,
But there has been several complaints. Now Investigator Hoskins is now back as the investigator. He's no longer a supervisor, so now he's been handling it.
he's been handling that. Okay.
Yes.
And do you recall the address for which this citation was issued?
The address that I issued it to, 8030 East Lance.
And whose address is that, to your
That
knowledge?
would be Lula Rayford.
Okay. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross, Ms. Wilkerson?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. Good morning, Investigator Chandler.
Good morning, Ms. Wilkins.
Okay, so going back to the original complaints, you said there were other officers originally handling this, correct?
Correct.
And those officers did not write any citations, correct?
No, they did not. They're not sworn in to write citations. They can't.
Okay. And then prior to you actually writing this citation or getting on this case, your office had this categorized as a neighbor dispute, correct?
That is correct.
So you didn't believe there was an actual issue with the dogs. There was just something going on between the neighbors, correct?
Correct.
And the issue, as far as the issue with the dogs, I see on your report from, I'm sorry, I withdraw that question. You stated that each time you went out, you never saw the nuisance problem.
That is
Correct?
correct. That is
So
correct.
you never heard the dogs barking and you never saw them outside on the lawn without a leash or anything of that nature.
That is correct.
And you had been to the property several times, correct?
Yes.
Okay. As an animal control officer, are you aware of the dog silencer device? Is that something that you're aware of in your line of work?
Yes.
And are you aware that using that device could sometimes make dogs bark a little more?
Yes. If it's not I don't know what I'm trying to say. It takes a process in order for that to work, if I could say it that way.
Okay, so there's a chance that if a dog silencer device was used, that could have been causing the dogs to bark a little more, correct?
Correct.
Okay. One second, Your Honor. And then you stated that there were multiple calls from Ms. Simmons, correct?
Yes.
There were never any calls from any other neighbors, is that correct?
Correct.
And you have still to this day haven't gotten any complaints from any other neighbors, correct?
Correct.
So all of these complaints, these constant complaints are only coming from Ms. Simmons?
Correct. Yes.
And Ms. Rayford does have a neighbor on the other side of her, correct?
Yes.
And you never received a complaint from that neighbor?
No.
Okay. One second, Your Honor, it was something. And are you aware of the parties trying to, I'm sorry, let me reframe that question. Is it your office? You said these calls originally went to officers, correct?
Yes.
And those officers, did they ever try to talk with Ms. Rayford and Ms. Simmons to resolve this?
Yes.
And there was no resolution from that, correct?
Correct.
Do you know if Ms. Simmons actually cooperated with that?
I don't know. I have to refresh and go back to the activities.
Okay. And actually, Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Can you redirect Ms. Horn?
Just one question. Is Officer Chandler, is it in your normal duty to respond to calls that are made through the chameleon system?
Yes,
Okay. And is that something you do all the time?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any additional witnesses, Ms. Horn?
No, Your Honor. No additional witnesses. Thank you.
Can you rest?
People rest.
Ms. Wilkerson?
Your Honor, I'm so sorry. May I ask Ms. Chandler one more question? I know I kind of rest my questions. Ms. Chandler, just another question as far as your chameleon system, and the activity cards that are completed through that system. There was an activity card completed on September the 15th of 2022. Are you familiar with that?
Not up here, but I do have it in front of me though. Give me a second. Okay. Give me a second. I can bring it up. I apologize. Give me 1 second.
No problem.
Okay, September 15th?
Yes.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
And that date is after the date the citation was issued, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, your office was still categorizing this as a neighbor dispute, correct?
Yes,
And there were notes that no one had ever seen the dog out, which means no one has ever seen this nuisance issue from your office.
correct,
And this is even after the citation was issued.
correct.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Ms. Horn, any questions based on Ms. Wilkerson's questions?
And this is my last one, even, but I believe that Officer Chandler, you did state that you're not testifying to something that you didn't see.
Correct,
You're not testifying to something you didn't see.
correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilkerson, any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call I would like to call my first witness outside of Ms. Raper first, but can I send her a quick text to have her log on to Zoom? I didn't want to just wait without knowing what time the trial would start, but she's ready to log on. She's logging on now. She should be appearing shortly.
Okay. Ms. Greer,
Yes.
is your name spelled correctly on the screen?
I do not see it on the screen.
Hey, spell your first name,
Annndrea,
your last.
Greer.
Thank you.
I can go ahead.
Yes, what she said is, ma'am, Ms. Greer, can you just say your name for the record, please?
Andrea Greer.
Okay, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You put your hand down. You may proceed, Ms. Wilkerson.
Good morning, Ms. Greer. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Where do you reside?
At 8039 East Lance Street.
And do you have a neighbor that goes by the name of Lula Rayford?
Yes, I do.
Do you actually know Miss Rayford?
Yes, I do.
And do you ever speak with Miss Rayford at times?
Yes, I do.
Have you ever had the opportunity to visit Miss Rayford at her home?
Yes, I have.
And did Miss Rayford own any dogs during your visit?
Yes.
Have you ever had any issues with Miss Rayford's dog?
No, I have not.
So during your visit, did the dogs ever try to attack you in any way or seem menacing?
No, not at all.
And would you say that Miss Rayford's dogs bark a lot?
No, they don't.
And would you consider their barking a nuisance at all?
No, I don't.
Are you aware of Miss Rayford having issues with any other neighbors?
Yes.
And do you know who the neighbor or neighbors are that Miss Rayford has issues with?
Yes, I know who they are because of where they live. I have never met them personally. I see
Okay.
them outside, but I know what house it is, and I know that the two women live there.
Okay. And do you know what, never mind, Your Honor. I'll withdraw that question. 1 second. And you've never had to call animal control or the police or anything regarding Ms. Rayford's dog, correct?
Your Honor, the people
I'm sorry.
would object leading.
That was a leading question. I withdraw the question, Your Honor.
Okay.
Have you ever had to call the police or complain or make any complaints regarding Ms. Rayford's dog?
No.
Okay, nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
All right, any cross, Ms. Horn?
Hi, Ms. Greer. My name is Tamika Horn. I'm the prosecutor in this case. Do you live across the street from Miss Rayford?
Not directly. It's kind of what you call kitty corner, but her neighbor's driveway is directly across from me. So it's
And
kind
so-
of weird.
I got you. And so is it safe to say or fair to say that you do not live right next door?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Ms. Wilkerson?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Any additional witnesses?
I would like to call Ms. Rayford, Your Honor.
Okay, do we want to put Ms. Greer back in the waiting room, or can she remain out, or?
I believe she's free to log off if she'd like. I don't have any more questions for her.
Okay, so you're.
And the people won't object because I believe Ms. Simmons was in the courtroom along with Officer Chandler too. So I think this is fair. Yep. We didn't sequester her before, so yep, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, so you're excused as a witness, Ms. Greer.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are you calling Ms. Rayford?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Rayford, can you unmute yourself, raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, put your hand down.
Good morning, Ms. Rayford. How are you?
Good morning. I'm okay.
How long have you resided at your current address?
Ever since 2009, July,
Okay, and how long have you been neighbors with Ms. Simmons? Has it been the entire time?
the mom have, yes.
So Ms. Simmons' mom has been your neighbor, but not Ms. Simmons?
I haven't seen Miss Simmons until 2000 and probably 19 or either 20, somewhere along in there.
Okay. And you own two dogs. I'm sorry. Do you own dogs?
Yes,
And what kind of dogs do you have?
I have pit bull and a Yorkie Terry.
How long have you owned your dogs?
My daughter got the pit bull 2020 for her graduation, and the other dog came 2000 and I want to say 21 or 22, 21.
Okay. And when you first got your dog, were they big dogs or were they puppies?
Puppy.
Okay, so both dogs were both dogs pretty small when you got them?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a neighbor that complains about your dogs?
Yes, I do. Not only my dog, but everything. Yes, I do.
And when did those complaints start?
2000, it got bad in 2020, but it started 2019 with Miss Simmons.
Okay, so she was complaining about things even before you got the dogs?
She was complaining, yes. In 2000, I think in 2020, we had a meeting at at 11 precinct to try to straighten out what was going on with me and her.
And this was prior to receiving the dogs or after you became owner of the dogs?
It probably was when I became owner of the dog, but the pit bull, I got her in April. She was around about a couple of weeks old, about 8 weeks old when I received April or May, and she was a couple of weeks old. So in 2020, during my daughter graduation, she was around about 4 or 5 months.
Okay, and is that when the complaint started from Ms. Simmons?
Miss Simmons did not only complain about the dog.
Okay.
She never, during that time, she didn't complain to me about the dog, because the dog wasn't nothing but a puppy.
Your Honor, the people would ask that Miss
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Rayford stick to the questions that are being asked on the table.
Okay, I'm going to rephrase my question. I think I might have been confusing Ms. Rayford a bit. So you had a meeting with Ms. Simmons and who was it? The neighborhood police or the 11th precinct?
Yes.
And was this prior to you owning your dogs?
Prior to me owning my dog, yes, but it wasn't about the dog.
Okay. Did Ms. Simmons ever come to you to discuss these complaints before calling the police or anything?
No.
Okay, so you've never talked to her about the dog issues?
No.
Okay. Do you have any of your other neighbors that complain about your dogs barking?
Miss Simmons, the only one that I have had complaint about. Anyone else, if they did.
Wait 1 second, I'm gonna ask you another question. You do have a neighbor on the opposite side of you, correct? The opposite side from where Miss Simmons is?
Yes.
And do you know that neighbor?
Yes.
Do you ever speak with that neighbor?
Yes.
Has that neighbor ever complained to you about your dogs?
The neighbor, no.
Okay. Do you ever see that neighbor in the backyard?
Yes.
And that neighbor has never complained to you about not being able to enjoy their backyard?
No, my neighbor next door, he play with the dog sometimes.
Okay, so he's friendly with the dogs.
Yes,
Okay. 1 second. You have children, Ms. Rayford?
yes.
How many children do you have?
I have 4.
Okay.
Well,
And
one of my daughter is grown, so she's,
Okay, but you have 4 children total.
yes,
And has your children ever had any issues with any of the neighbors?
yes.
And what neighbor have your children had issues with?
Miss Simmons and her mom.
Okay. And have you ever witnessed Miss Simmons arguing back and forth with your children?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And have those arguments ever been in a threatening or maybe loud manner?
Yes,
And have your dogs ever been present during these arguments or disputes?
yes,
Have you ever witnessed Miss Simmons maybe taunting your dogs in any way?
Miss Simmons always out there taking picture. If the dog go out, she'd be out there taking a picture. The dog would bark at her.
Okay.
So, and the thing on her window that she
Wait
has.
1 second. I have to ask another question. So you have witnessed Miss Simmons coming out with her camera to kind of record the dogs,
Yes,
and the dogs will bark at her when she does so.
yes.
Okay. Have you noticed any type of device or item in Miss Simmons' window?
Yes.
Do you know what that device is?
No, I didn't know until I heard it in the court.
Okay. That device, have you noticed that it make your dogs act a certain way?
Yes.
Your Honor, the people object. She already stated she didn't know what it was. So how can her observations have been made at a time when she knew the device was there?
Well, I'll rephrase my question. 1 second, Ms. Rayford. I'll rephrase the question. Do you remember when you started noticing that device in Miss Simmons' window?
I noticed when my dog kept looking up at the window, barking at the window, and I used to wonder what's going on. So my daughter told me that, Mom, look, she got that thing in the window that making the dog bark.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, that people would ask that last statement be stricken. Her daughter is not here to testify to that. Hearsay.
Ms. Rayford, I'm going to ask you to just follow my questions. You can't say what your daughter said, but I'm going to ask you some questions. At the time that you noticed this device in the window, did your dog start acting any differently?
Yes.
And did you believe that the device was making your dogs act differently?
I know it was because I can hear the sound myself sometimes.
So this particular device made a sound that you could hear?
It made a sound that I can hear and unknown. My dog would look up at her window and bark, or either look at her window. Sometimes he'd shake and jump. He would jump around and look at it.
Okay, so you believe that it was something that the device was doing that make your dog act like that?
Yes, I know.
1 second, Your Honor. How often do you let your dogs out during the day?
I don't let my dog out that often. When my dog go out, they come back in. Even though
1 second, I'm going to stop you and ask you another question. Do you have set times that you let the dog out, or is it just when the dog lets you know it needs to go to the bathroom?
Sometime when the dog let me know. Sometime I know that the dog need to get out, I let him out. It'd be no later than 8, 9 o'clock. She'd be back in by 10:30 or 10 o'clock.
Okay. And 1 second, Your Honor. And you said Ms. Simmons has complained about other things, correct?
Yes.
And what type of other things
And Your
outside of?
Honor, I'm not, well, I would object as to relevancy. This is based on the dog ordinance. These charges.
It is, but I kind of.
It's relevant to show.
I'll give Ms. Wilkerson some leeway because I see where she's
I
going.
understand, Your Honor. Yes.
And Ms. Rayford, what other issues have you had as far as disputes with Ms. Simmons?
Miss Simmons I'm a foster and adopted mom. So Miss Simmons have told my.
Wait, 1 second. You can't say what
Okay.
Ms. Simmons said, but
I wasn't. Okay.
have Ms. Simmons had issues with things other than the dogs? Let's start there.
Yes, yes,
And what else has Ms. Simmons complained about?
my kids.
Okay. And at any time did Ms. Simmons make you aware that she did not like your kids?
Yep, she said it out her own mouth to me.
Okay. And at any time have Ms. Simmons made you aware that she do not like your dogs?
Yes, the way that she take picture and go take the picture, video and all the time, and the way that when she holler, when her and my kids get into it, the dog be out there too. So
Okay. I don't believe I have any further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Ms. Horncroft.
Okay, yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Hello, Ms. Rayford. I'm Tamika Horn. I'm the prosecutor on this file. You said that you've been, ever since you've lived there, Mrs. Simmons' mom has been your neighbor.
yes,
Okay. You also stated that Ms. Simmons complains about the dogs or has
She
made
haven't-
complaints.
she haven't complained to me. She made complaint to the animal control.
Okay. And you stated that that got bad in 2020, correct?
It really got bad in 2021.
And you said that these issues began happening after you got the dogs, correct?
It started before I got the dog, but it got bad afterward.
And have your dogs ever been off your property?
They have.
Have the dogs ever traveled onto Miss Simmons' property?
I have seen the tape on when we was at court where
So you would say that the dogs traveled off of your property onto Miss Simmons' property, correct?
Not all the time, yes. I have seen that, yes.
If you're not a dog owner or not, regardless if you're a dog owner, wouldn't that annoy you if someone's dogs continue to be on your property?
My dog was on her property twice.
Wouldn't that create a bad relationship?
Okay.
I'm sorry. Wouldn't that create a bad relationship between the two of you? If you don't want someone else's dogs on your property?
That happened way before the dog even got on her property. We was going through this before that. It's not about the dog.
Can you stick with the questions I asked, Ms.
Okay.
Rayford? Miss Ma'am?
Okay. Yes, I will.
Thank you so much. As an owner of the dog, aren't you responsible for where the dogs are?
Yes.
Are you also responsible for preventing them from engaging in behavior that would annoy or disturb the peace of other neighbors?
If someone.
Is that your responsibility though, to prevent that?
I don't know how to answer that because if someone messing with the dog, how could I prevent it from happening?
But if you're the owner of the dogs, isn't it your responsibility to prevent dogs off your property? In addition to nuisance behavior?
Off somebody, yes. Nuisance behavior, if you aggravating the dog, I cannot stop that.
Okay, and another question. I want to be totally respectful because I know you're my elder and I do respect you. I have to prosecute this case. What if you in making a complaint to animal control, wouldn't you say you need evidence to show what's going on?
Sometimes, yes.
And you stated that you believe that Miss Simmons taking pictures is taunting the dogs.
Well, if the dog not doing nothing, just in my backyard, yes.
Okay. And you stated that when you let the dogs out, it's no later than 8 or 9 p.m., right?
Yes.
But you also testified that they don't come back in until 10 p.m.
No, they stay out. When I leave the house, my dog is in my house. My dog never be out if I'm not here.
And
And I
but the
leave.
question was, when you let them out, you said it's no later than about 8, 9 o'clock, correct?
Yes,
And they usually come back in around 10 o'clock.
I have them in during the day or doing whatever before 10 because my dog, okay, then like I said, my dog don't never stay out when I'm not home.
Okay, and I'm just, I'm asking what you can
And
testify
I
to.
understand what you said, but maybe the question was not as what I was speaking of.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe it wasn't answered. But my dog never left outside without me being home. Never.
Okay, and just one more question, as to it's being related to your responsibilities as an owner of the dogs and your pets, your fur babies. I get it. Do you believe that? Is your responsibility to keep them on the property, correct? And I know
Yes.
I asked this question before. And do you believe a neighbor needs to call to the police for you to fulfill your duties?
No.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rayford. I really appreciate it. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Ms. Wilkerson?
Just one question, Your Honor. Ms. Rayford, have there been times when you did have to call your dog in or bring them in for a problem?
Yes.
And do you always immediately address the problem when it's brought to your attention?
Yes.
Okay, so that means if your dog is ever out or on someone's property, you immediately call the dog in, correct?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Any additional witnesses, Ms. Wilkerson?
No further witnesses, Your Honor.
You rest.
Yes.
Ms. Horn, any rebuttal witnesses?
Not at all, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Okay. So are we ready for closing argument?
The people are
Yes.
ready, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm gonna bring Ms. Simmons in. All right, so Ms. Simmons has joined us and you may proceed as the closing argument this morning.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. The people have the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Rayford's pit bull and Yorkie are a source of nuisance. The Detroit City Code 6-1-2 defines nuisance animal as an animal running at large on public property or any private property that is not the property of its owner or keeper, and whose behavior constitutes a nuisance. In Section 2, unreasonably annoys or unreasonably disturbs or annoys the quiet, comfort, and repose of persons in the vicinity by loud, frequent, habitual, or repeated barking, howling, or yelping. Ms. Simmons testified that ever since the end, possibly, I believe, or at least the summer of 2020, and Ms. Rayford also testified that a lot of this complaining started in 2019 after she got the dogs, one for which the pit bull belongs to her daughter for as a graduation gift. I'm not quite certain when the Yorkie became a resident at the home. Ms. Simmons stated that the barking went on so incessantly, over time, all the time, to the point that she did buy a silencer. She did buy a device. Ms. Simmons also testified that she does not own a pet. She does not own a dog. She also stated that when she goes out to take care of her yard, the pit bull specifically jumps, barks, and gets more aggressive as she's out there. She's also testified that she has a nice patio in which she cannot use because of the disturbance made by the dogs, specifically the pit bull, on most occasions. Also, Ms. Simmons testified that she cannot enjoy the quiet, peace, and repose of her property. And we also represented video, Your Honor, showing a Yorkie on her property. Again, Ms. Simmons doesn't own a dog. Ms. Rayford also testified in confirming that her dogs have gotten off of her property. She also testified that it's her responsibility to make sure they don't, and that they don't engage in nuisance behavior. Ms. Simmons testified that this has been repeated. Supervisor Chandler has visited the property. While she's seen no violations, she's going out there based on investigation and complaints made by Ms. Simmons. Ms. Greer testified that she hasn't had a disturbance or has been made a nuisance, has had nuisance behavior coming from the dogs, but she also testified she lives across the street. Now, understand that the ordinance provides in the vicinity, but Ms. Simmons is right next door. And so she may witness some things that other neighbors do not witness. In addition to that, Ms. Rayford said it got real bad in 2020, and so did Ms. Sharmonique Simmons. You know, defense is showing how this may be some kind of neighbor dispute, but it's understandable why there is a dispute. And it was because of these dogs and the nuisance behavior that they are presenting to Ms. Simmons, where she can't enjoy the quiet of her home or anything. I believe, Your Honor, that Ms. Rayford unfortunately was disingenuous in her testimony when she testified as to the device. She testified that she didn't even know what it was. She didn't know what it was there. She even had to bring in some hearsay that I had to object to, the people had to object to, because how can she observe something that she didn't know was there? In addition to that, she believes that Ms. Simmons' taking of pictures is taunting. Well, Ms. Simmons has built her case showing that she can't enjoy her home. This has to stop. So therefore, she needs evidence. So I don't believe taunting a dog with is by holding a camera is taunting the dog or provoking the dog in any manner. She also testified, Ms. Rayford, that she lets the dogs out around 8 or 9 p.m. and then maybe the dogs come in about 10 p.m. That's about 2 hours. Ms. Simmons testified that she's heard the dogs all night at some points. So this is the evidence that we have. So the people believe that this is not just a neighbor's dispute. The people don't believe that this device of some sort has created some issue for the dog to continue incessant barking. As a matter of fact, Ms. Simmons testified that the barking still continues, and after she removed the device. And the reason for the device was because of the nuisance barking. So the people believe in, and just for the record, Your Honor, under 6-1-3, an animal owner who is Ms. Rayford or person who has custody of an animal shall prevent an animal from engaging in nuisance, menacing, potentially dangerous or dangerous behavior. The people believe this is menacing, nuisance behavior. Ms. Simmons testified how she felt when the dog comes out and continue and gets more and more aggressive, Your Honor. The people also believe that the dog should be declared a public nuisance because while it's Ms. Simmons who's doing the complaining, Ms. Simmons is a citizen and member of the public and has a right to enjoy her property the way she would like to without worrying about some dogs coming out, getting on her property or barking incessantly. So we also believe under 6-1-7 that these dogs should also be declared a public nuisance. Thank you, Your Honor.
Lucas.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, you've had a chance to review and hear all evidence, including testimony as well as some videos, Your Honor. You've only saw, I believe, one video of the dog barking and jumping on the fence, but as you've seen, Ms. Simmons was in her backyard shoveling snow, very close to the dog, which of course the dog is going to bark at a neighbor that's close to the fence. The other video of Ms. Rayford's dog being on Ms. Simmons' porch, we only saw one video of that as well, where Ms. Rayford's children immediately called the dog back once they saw the dog was over on the porch, which means they did take action to prevent the dog from continuing in this behavior. You witnessed at that time, Ms. Simmons began to yell at the kids and even called the dog a little bastard on the video, in which it shows that she is the one that is agitating the situation. She's making it worse than what it has to be at times because they were already calling the dog back over onto their own property. Ms. Simmons herself testified that she had been arguing with Ms. Rayford's children at times when the dogs were present. It is a common, I guess, known fact that people know dogs are protectors for their owners. The dog witnesses and he see Ms. Simmons engaging with his owners in a threatening and loud behavior, which, you know, a dog is going to react to that. We did hear testimony from Ms. Greer, who is also a neighbor, even though she's across the street from Ms. Rayford. She is a neighbor to the neighborhood. She stated that she has visited Ms. Rayford. She hasn't ever had any problems with the dogs. The dogs have never jumped on her, attacked her. She don't feel like the barking is a nuisance. And this is also a neighbor in the current neighborhood. You heard testimony from Ms. Rayford, who stated that her neighbor on the opposite side of her, directly next door to her, not across the street, actually plays with her dogs at times. He's friendly with the dogs. So we know from that testimony, these dogs are not an issue to that neighbor. As the investigator Chandler testified, this was originally categorized as a neighbor dispute by her office. The activity reports show that in the notes that they said this was a neighbor dispute. They had been out. They didn't see the dogs, didn't see the nuisance behavior. No one else has seen or complained about this nuisance behavior except Ms. Simmons. And the fact that Ms. Simmons' mother has been living next door for years, there were never any problems. We heard testimony from Ms. Rayford that Ms. Simmons may have just recently moved in or hadn't been there, and then all of these complaints and these issues start with Ms. Rayford and her neighbors, who there wasn't any complaints before 2020, which is what the testimony showed. Ms. Rayford also testified that there were issues even before she got the dogs, where she had to have a meeting with the neighborhood police about other things Ms. Simmons had complained about. So this issue began even before these dogs came. Your Honor, the testimony, the evidence all will show that this is not an issue about the dogs. The dogs are not a nuisance. We see that from the other neighbors. This is the issue with Ms. Simmons. Ms. Simmons has a problem with Ms. Rayford as her neighbor, and she's using his dogs as an excuse. Ms. Rayford's dogs has not been deemed a nuisance by any other neighbor. No other complaints were received from anyone except Ms. Simmons, who has admitted to not liking Ms. Rayford's children, who has admitted to not liking Ms. Rayford's dog. She said she even sometimes called the little dog's mother effers sometimes because she don't like the dog. She don't want them on her property, anywhere near her property. And I believe the dogs just frustrate her. She don't like them, and she just wants Ms. Rayford to get rid of the dogs, and this is her way of doing so, Your Honor. At this time, I believe the court can find Ms. Rayford not guilty of these charge. The statute said that it has to be the dogs have to be unreasonably disturbing or annoying the quiet of the neighbors. This is not unreasonable in this case because Ms. Simmons had a dog silencer that was making the dogs bark more. It's not unreasonable for a dog to bark more when there's a high frequency pitch sound constantly ringing that these dogs can hear. It's not unreasonable for the dog to bark. It's also not unreasonable for a dog to bark when someone walks up to the fence next to the dog in their backyard, holding a camera or shoveling their grass. That's not unreasonable barking, Your Honor. Now, as far as barking all throughout the night, we didn't see any evidence of that. We didn't have any video camera barking at 3 o'clock in the morning, so we don't have that evidence. We just have Ms. Simmons' testimony to say that happened, but no other neighbors has complained that this is a problem to the point where they can't sleep, they can't enjoy their backyard. Only Ms. Simmons. This is a subjective issue, and I don't believe Ms. Rayford is guilty of these crimes, and I believe the court can find that from the evidence. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any rebuttal argument, Ms. Moore?
And very quickly, Your Honor, I believe the court should consider the testimony and not the weight of the video or audio evidence that was not shown in this matter. And as to Ms. Rayford immediately addressing these problems have been going on for years. The people do not consider that immediate.
This is a really unfortunate case. You have two neighbors who obviously don't get along, and it's to the point that any little thing becomes a nuisance for Ms. Simmons. And maybe because I'm a dog owner, I'm not a big dog person, but I have dogs, so I understand what dogs do. And they sniff and they go on to other people's properties sometimes, but it is your job as the owner of that dog to make sure your dog stays on your property. or stays in the backyard. I understand how dogs will bark sometimes when you go into the backyard. I got next door to me, the dog, every time we go back there, the dog barks. But we also have something in the fence where the dog can't really see us. So, I mean, that helps. It's something really easy that you can just put up, and you can just buy it probably at Walmart or somewhere. But you know, the court has to answer the question as to whether the dogs are nuisance. Are they engaging in nuisance, menacing, or dangerous behavior? And are they loud, frequent barking caused by a public nuisance to neighbors? Now, Ms. Simmons testified that the dogs are constantly barking, and she did show some proof of the dogs being on her property. She did show some proof of the pit bull barking at her while she was shoveling her grass, shoveling snow off her grass, and the dog was jumping and barking. And then there was some video of the Yorkie, the little small dog, you know, going onto her lawn and sniffing. So with the evidence that's been presented, this is tough because I don't feel like they're just a public nuisance. I feel, but I mean, you know, Ms. Simmons does have the right to not have any dogs that she doesn't own to be on her property. And I think Ms. Rayford should make a better effort at making sure her dogs don't, especially if you know that Ms. Simmons doesn't like it and you guys have issues, just keep your dogs off of her property. So I'm not gonna find her guilty of any of these tickets, but Ms. Rayford, you need to hear me clearly, because I promise you, if your dogs are on Ms. Simmons' property again, and if they're barking, she is going to contact Investigator Chandler, and we will be right back here. And if this continues to happen, you have the same result. So I don't think that your dogs are just a public nuisance, but you need to do a better job of keeping your dogs off her property. And I mean, get something to cover up the fence. You can look into that today, so that you have some kind of privacy fence. You can put it on your side of the fence, and it's like it's kind of like a sheet, but it's not a sheet because it's like a mesh material. But you can get that, and so that the dogs won't be so distracted by what's going on in her backyard if they happen to be out. Because I mean, you can't keep them in the house forever, but you just have to do a better job of keeping your dogs away from Miss Simmons. Now, I hope that at some point you guys can get along because you're neighbors, and it really kind of sucks to be living so close to someone you don't like. I mean, that's just a really unfortunate situation, but you have to do better. Keep your dogs off her property. Keep them off your, when they go out to use the toilet or bathroom, then it's neither. When they go out to relieve themselves, make sure they stay on your property. Make sure they stay on your property. And I know little dogs sniff, because I got a little dog and it sniffs everywhere, but keep them off her property. All right. So good luck to both of you. And I hope that you guys can resolve some of these issues without it getting to this point. That's all said.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.